Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today into something I think we've all thought about. English levels. Beginner, intermediate, all that. But what do they really mean?
That's a great question. And it can be easy to take those labels for granted without really understanding what skills each level represents.
Exactly. So we've got this video that breaks down an English level test, and we thought, hey, let's go through it together. Kind of like we're taking the test ourselves, but with an expert here to give us the inside scoop on why some answers work and some don't.
I like that. It's a fun way to explore the nuances of English and maybe even pick up some learning tips along the way.
Totally. So we'll start from the very beginning, beginner level.
Sure.
And one of the first things that popped up in the video was those little words, a and the, like Sarah has blank very big house.
Ah, articles. They can be tricky, especially for those whose native languages don't have them.
Right. It seems so simple to native speakers, but the video really pointed out how these tiny words can make a big difference in meaning.
Absolutely. So in this case, the correct answer is Sarah has a very big house, because we don't know which big house we're talking about.
So if we said Sarah has the very big house, it'd be like, everyone knows exactly which house we mean, right?
Exactly. It's the only big house in town. It's that specificity that the brings.
Like a secret code. Master that, and you're one step closer to unlocking English. Okay, another one from the beginner section that stood out to me was about buy for transportation. The question was, she goes to the office blank taxi. I know this trips up a lot of learners.
Oh, it definitely does. It's those idiomatic expressions in English that can be so tricky to master, but they're essential for sounding natural.
Yeah. You can't just translate word for word from your native language. Sometimes it's a whole phrase you got to learn. So what's the right way to say it?
By taxi. No, the in there.
It's all about those unwritten rules that native speakers just kind of absorb, but learners have to figure out consciously.
Exactly. It's like learning the rhythm of the language, not just the individual words.
Okay, let's talk verbs. Specifically, the present simple tense and that little s that gets added to the end sometimes. The video showed the example, she blanks in France. Why is that so important?
Ah, yes. Subject-verb agreement. It's a fundamental concept in English, and it can be a bit of a headache for beginners.
Yeah, sometimes even I forget it when I'm speaking fast.
It happens. So in this case, the correct answer is she lives in France. We add that S because she is a third-person singular pronoun.
It's like that little S is carrying a lot of weight, huh? It tells us who's doing the action.
Exactly. And mastering this simple rule is a huge step towards clear communication.
Okay, last one from the beginner level that I thought was interesting was about uncountable nouns. Like advice. You can't really count it as one advice, two advices. So how does that work in English grammar?
Another great point. Uncountable nouns can be confusing because, as you said, they don't behave like regular countable nouns. We treat them as a single unit.
So even if you're talking about a lot of advice, you'd still say some advice, not advices.
Exactly. We might say pieces of advice, but the noun itself remains singular.
It's another one of those subtle rules that you wouldn't necessarily think about, but it makes a big difference in how you sound.
It definitely does. These little details are what start to build that foundation for fluency.
So once you've got those beginner concepts down, you're ready for the intermediate level, right?
Absolutely. That's where things get even more interesting.
I can't wait. But for now, we'll take a break and let everyone digest all this beginner level goodness. When we come back, we'll tackle the intermediate level. So buckle up.
All right, intermediate level. Are you ready for some of those grammar points that even native speakers trip over sometimes?
Oh, I'm sure I'll trip over plenty today. But yeah, bring on the challenge.
Yeah.
Let's see. One of the first questions in the intermediate section of the video was a blank see Mary last night. And the options were haven't see, didn't see, and, I think one was just wrong, like don't saw or something.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that one was there to really test your knowledge of verb forms.
So what's the right way to say it? I always get mixed up with past simple versus present perfect.
It's a common struggle,
Yeah.
but this one's all about that little phrase, last night. Because we have a specific time reference, the correct answer is, I didn't see Mary last night. Past simple for completed actions in the past.
Okay, so if there wasn't last night, and it was just like, I blank see Mary, then it'd be present perfect.
You got it. I haven't seen Mary. Present perfect is more about a time period leading up to now.
Present perfect is like a bridge from the past to now.
I like that.
Okay, here's one that I know I mess up. She's never blanked to Australia. Is it been or gone or went.
Been versus gone, another classic English conundrum.
Right. They seem interchangeable sometimes.
The correct answer is she's never been to Australia. It emphasizes the experience or lack thereof. She hasn't had that experience of visiting.
So if she was still in Australia, we'd say she's gone to Australia.
Exactly. Gone focuses on the current location.
These tiny words are so powerful. No wonder English learners get a headache.
I can imagine. It's all about the subtle shades of meaning. And that leads us nicely to phrasal verbs. You know, those combinations of verbs and prepositions that can change the meaning entirely?
Oh yeah, phrasal verbs. They're like my arch enemy.
The video used this example. They blank the trip because Mike was sick.
Wasn't it something like called out, called off, and called for?
You got it. And this is where knowing the specific phrasal verb is crucial. The correct answer is they called off the trip, meaning they canceled it.
Called off, okay. But what about the other ones, just so I know for next time?
Call out is more like challenging someone or pointing out a problem. Call for usually means something is required or necessary.
So one little word can totally change everything. Any tips for tackling phrasal verbs, aside from just running away?
The best way is to learn them in context, just like you're doing now, not from lists, but from real examples.
Movies, podcasts, all that.
Exactly. See how native speakers use them naturally.
Makes sense. Okay, I see another challenge on the horizon. Used to. The video gave this example. When he was a child, he blank play chess.
Ah, yes, used to. Another classic, and one that often causes confusion.
I'm already confused.
The correct answer here is, when he was a child, he used to play chess. We used to talk about past habits or states that are no longer true.
So he played chess regularly when he was younger, but not anymore.
Exactly, like a little time machine, taking us back to describe those things that have changed.
Okay, starting to get the hang of it. But wait, I know used to has some tricky cousins. Be used to and get used to.
Right, you're right on money. And those can be even more confusing for learners because they sound so similar.
Yeah, and I feel like I switch them up constantly. So what's the difference?
Think of be used to as a state of being accustomed to something. Like, I am used to the spicy food here, meaning it doesn't bother you, you're comfortable with it.
Okay, I think I get that. But then get used to, that's more about the process of becoming accustomed.
Yes, I am getting used to waking up early, implying it's still a bit of a struggle, but you're adapting.
Ah, okay. So it's like, are you already there, comfortable with it, or are you still on the journey?
That's a great way to put it. And those subtle differences can really change what you're trying to communicate.
Okay, I think my brain is officially doing a workout now.
And we haven't even reached the advanced level yet.
Oh boy, what have we gotten ourselves into?
Don't worry, I'll be here to guide you through it, the advanced level. This is where we see the finer points of English, the things that make you sound truly fluent.
All right, hit me with it. What kind of challenges are we talking about here?
Well, the first advanced question in the video was, I blink, get in through the window. And the options were managed to, could to, and was able to.
Okay, I can see how those might be tricky. They all kind of mean the same thing, right? Being able to do something.
True, but there are subtle differences. The best answer is, I managed to get in through the window. It implies there was some difficulty involved.
Ah, so it's not just about being able, it's about the effort. Like, I overcame that obstacle.
Exactly. Managed to adds that extra layer of meaning.
Okay, makes sense. What else did the video highlight at the advanced level?
Pronoun placement with phrasal verbs. Remember those tricky things. The example was, your papers are on the floor. Why don't you blank?
Oh yeah, I definitely remember struggling with that. The options were like, pick up 'em up and just pick 'em.
And it all comes down to where that pronoun goes. The correct answer is pick them up.
So you got to sneak the pronoun in between the verb and the preposition. It's like a little word sandwich.
Haha, I like that. And it's those tiny details that can really elevate your English.
Totally. It's like, you know the rules, but now you're mastering at the finer points. Okay, I'm ready for more.
All right, how about some vocabulary? The video introduced the word straightforward, as in the directions my friend gave us were blank, so we were able to find his house easily.
Straightforward. So, like, simple. Easy to understand.
Exactly, and this highlights how important it is to use the right vocabulary in the right context. It's not just about knowing big words, it's about knowing when to use them.
So you wouldn't say the instructions for building this rocket ship were straightforward, unless it was a very, very simple rocket ship.
Precisely. Advanced vocabulary is about nuance.
What other words did they mention?
Assets, like one of Mike's blank is his writing skill. He writes very clearly and professionally.
So assets are like strengths or valuable qualities. Makes sense.
And these examples show how important vocabulary is for reaching that advanced level. It allows you to express yourself with precision.
Not just grammar, but the words themselves. Okay, back to some grammar though. The video talked about disappointed versus disappointing, which I know I've messed up before.
It's a common mistake. The example they gave was, we were really blank with the weather.
So is it we were disappointed or we were disappointing? I always forget which one is which.
Think about who is experiencing the feeling. In this case, we feel disappointed. So the correct answer is we were really disappointed with the weather.
The weather was disappointing and we were disappointed by it.
Precisely. And this distinction applies to many other edding adjectives as well.
Okay, that makes sense. What other advanced grammar points did the video cover?
Reported speech. You know, he said, she said, all that. They gave the example, where have you been? And asked how you'd report that question.
Oh, reported speech. I always get tangled up in the tenses. It's like time travel for grammar.
It can definitely feel that way. The options were, he asked me where I have been, he asked me where I was, and he asked me where I had been.
So many options. What's the right one?
He asked me where I had been. Notice that shift in tense. Present perfect becomes past perfect in reported speech.
Right, because it's like we're stepping back in time. Okay, got it. Anything else?
One more. The passive voice. They gave the example. The painting blank for $3,000.
Passive voice. That's where the action is more important than who did it, right?
Exactly. The options were sold, was sold, and was being sold. And the correct answer is the painting was sold for $3,000.
It emphasizes what happened to the painting, not who sold it. Like, this masterpiece found a new home, that's all that matters.
I like that. So, you see, the passive voice can be very useful in certain contexts.
Wow. We really have gone through a lot today. From those tiny articles all the way to the passive voice, I feel like my English muscles got a workout.
It's been a great journey through the levels.
So after all this, what would you say is the most important thing for someone to focus on if they want to reach an advanced level?
I think it's about going beyond the rules and developing a feel for the language. Pay attention to the nuances, the subtleties, the way native speakers actually use English.
It's like you're not just speaking English, you're thinking in English.
Exactly. And that comes from practice, immersion, and a willingness to make mistakes along the way.
Speaking of mistakes, if you could give one piece of advice to English learners, what would it be?
Don't be afraid to make those mistakes. Embrace them. That's how you learn and grow.
Such great advice. It's so easy to get caught up in the fear of making mistakes, but you're right, they're part of the journey. Well, this deep dive has been incredibly insightful. We started with those basic building blocks, and now we're here, talking about the nuances of advanced English. I hope everyone listening feels a little more confident about their own English journey, no matter what level they're at. And as always, a huge thank you to you, our listeners, for joining us on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep exploring, and keep embracing the beauty of the English language. We'll see you next time.